Okay.
Hi everyone, welcome to ELI, the place where you get your daily dose of inspiration for entrepreneurship. And today we have with us Mr. Punit Gupta, who is the founder of EasyEcom, which is an inventory management software for retailers operating on multiple channels. Hi Punit, welcome to ELI.
Hi, Priya. Hi. Thanks a lot for inviting me here. I'm very happy to talk about my journey, how we have built the company so far, and the way forward.
Hi.
Uh, so, kind of give you some background in terms of what we do. So, EasyEcom essentially is an e-commerce enabler. That means we essentially help various e-commerce companies that are trying to sell on various platforms which are online, be it Amazon, Flipkart, or any other social media platforms and all of that. And the problem that we identified that as soon as you start to sell on multiple platforms, then how do you really keep track of your day-to-day operations and how many inventories do you have for each of the product you carry? Then you have to go and update that everywhere on all the channels. Then you might receive orders from n number of channels. How do you manage those? So we realized that we realized it's a big problem, and we basically the first attempt was solving the problem was we basically became a seller ourselves, right? So we registered on Amazon, we registered on Flipkart, and we started selling online ourselves. So we'd go and procure stuff locally. We started from Bangalore, so we'll go and procure stuff locally in Bangalore, and then we'll go and resell that to various third-party e-commerce platforms. That's how we started. So we realized this problem firsthand, and so we said, why not build some technology that can essentially help automate the day-to-day operations. Um, and being a techie myself, we basically took that approach, and we built out the first version. And this I'm talking about almost back in 2015 is when we built out the first version, rolled it out to few retailers in Bangalore locally. And then we realized, everybody was just struggling with the problem that we were facing ourselves. And then it became an instant hit. A lot of retailers, they would come to us and kind of explore the platform. Then we realized that, as the e-commerce is growing, this problem itself was growing, right? Because back in the day, back in 2015, uh, e-commerce was also kind of new, and volume that people were dealing with, they were relatively small, right? As the volume grew, as the marketplace, as the platform themselves grew, all the volume grew, and then the problem compounded in itself and became very huge, where you just can't run the business without automation in place. And one of the key reasons is that, see, when you sell in an offline shop, right, what happens is that you do, a profitable business in the sense each unit you sell, there is a money made. What happens when you are selling online is that you are selling across the country. So you incur so many different expenses on each sale that you do that, it becomes a very low margin business. A low margin business at a high scale, you can't run without automation, right? And that is where, I think a platform like ours becomes very handy, where we bring down the cost to run the business, and we help identify the leakages in profit wherever you are, wherever it's basically happening. And then over time, we basically evolved, and then obviously COVID happened. And as you can imagine, COVID, we were locked in our homes. And that's when I think our growth journey really exploded. And the team size went from less than 10 to almost little over 100 now in the past 3 years. And we also raised a round of funding, our Series A first institutional round we raised in the month of December. And we are looking to essentially hire another close to 200 members in the next 8 to 12 months. And we are growing quite rapidly as we speak, and we work with some of the largest brands now who are selling online. And this includes both traditional brands as well as brands who start on e-commerce, which we commonly call as D2C brand, direct to consumer brands,
Hmm.
who will sell directly to consumers. Um, uh, So that's what we essentially do on a high level. And now, like if you see our tagline, we like to call ourselves the operating system of e-commerce. And by that we mean is that I mean the day, like if you see the operations team of anybody who's selling online, I mean they come to office and they log into our system first, and then the day-to-day activity goes on. So it's like the operating system where you do everything operations related. So yeah, that I mean that's where we are.
Puneet, tell us a little bit about your early life prior to entrepreneurship, and tell us what are the different events in your life that influenced you to become an entrepreneur, or triggered that entrepreneurial bit in you. Or how did you land up in entrepreneurship?
So see, I mean I come from a business background myself. My father is a trader, and my entire family. I mean, essentially they are some sort of business. They basically run. So I kind of had this thing in me all the time, and I attended. I mean, as part of undergraduate, I studied in IIT Guwahati, and then I went to US, did my masters and all. So while we were there, I mean, I basically attended a few, few courses, executed a few projects as part of the college curriculum. So that's where I think early interest in the entrepreneurship came. And then what happened was after I graduated, somehow I got in touch with a very interesting company based out of Atlanta only, where I was studying.
Mm.
And they were into very early stages of building a product. And what they did was they basically built out a platform for essentially so what we have in urban clap in India, right?
Mm.
Where they provide essentially home services. So the same concept, but for commercial work, is what this company was doing in the US. And they started with telecom and they expanded into all the other areas. Uh, then I was their first tech employee, and then I basically joined the company, built out the team, built out the platform. Then essentially stayed there for around 7 years, and then the company grew to a sizable entity, and then it got acquired by a private equity firm. So I saw basically end to end journey of a company being built from scratch to all the way to being to basically getting acquired. So that's when I realized that why don't I also try my hands at building something from scratch myself. And that's when basically came back to India, relocated, and tried my hands on few things. That's when e-commerce was actually growing. Amazon was just entering India, so it was a good opportunity. That's how basically the whole thing started.
Okay. And didn't you feel a little uncertain to come? One is move back to India, then start with entrepreneurship. How did that play out for you?
No, obviously, I mean, entrepreneurship is obviously not easy financially as well as, I mean, from a family point of view as well, because you remain without, I mean, salary, without paycheck for a while, and that happened with me as well. But I guess, I mean, unless until you have some backup, unless until you have some side income or something, it becomes difficult. So luckily, since I worked for quite some time, I had good amount of savings, and then I also, since the company got acquired where I was working, I got a decent exit from there as well. So I had a decent financial backup, so I didn't have to worry about month to month paycheck as such. So I was lucky in that terms. So I was able to kind of focus my energy into building the company from day one. So early on, the early few years, actually I funded from my personal funds only, and then we built out the company. We built out the revenue towards certain size, and then when we raised our Series A last year, that's when I think we were able to retain good amount of equity also without diluting a whole lot, which you normally see companies who dilute very early on. They basically let go of lot of equity. That we made sure that we were not doing. So we still hold with significant amount of equity in the company between the founders. So that's it.
Got you.
But
Uh,
having said, we've had our own cycle of boom and bust and all that. We've gone through multiple cycles. I mean, we went through a cycle when demonetization happened in India. So demonetization happened, then GST got rolled out. So all these things had impact. In fact, I remember when COVID first happened in the first month. I mean, it was a question whether we can continue or not because everything was shut down for the first month, right? And that's when I mean, we had to take a call saying that no, we'll survive. Then from next month onward, we started to see big volumes and big demand of e-commerce. The first month was tough. So we have seen our ups and downs during the journey. And that's what I think makes an entrepreneur, mentally strong person because you go through so much.
Hmm. Tell us about the product building process at EasyEcom. How did you? You said you started as a D2C player yourself, and then understood the logistics, and then moved on to building the tech stack for it. How did it play out for you? Can you give us a little glimpse about it?
Correct, correct. So what happened was since I had a tech background, right, and when we started our trading company, when we were selling ourselves online, we actually built the first version for ourselves for our internal usage,
Mhm.
and that is something. I mean, I built myself with just one more person, so I mean, it was just two of us, so we were just sitting in the room and building. And then when the first version came out, I think that's when the adoption that we saw of the first version that actually gave us a lot of motivation. And then I went out and built the early team, and I made sure that I mean, we brought on board some very strong technical folks to basically help out on the product side. And that's when and one thing I think we did very interesting was that we basically we always had paying customers from day one as such, right? So we always kind of knew what to build next, right?
Mm.
And we kept building with the customers. And that's one thing you'll see, one of the major reasons why companies actually fail in their early years is that you build something that nobody wants or very few people want, right?
Mm.
And luckily, because we were solving a real problem, we had customers who were paying us from day one. I think we were able to kind of keep our focus very good in the sense we were a laser focus on solving the real pain points, not end up building a vitamin company as such, like vitamin versus kind of a painkiller kind of an approach. So we always were solving a real pain. So that worked out in our favor.
Okay. Tell us about the customer acquisition. You said you had revenue flowing in from day one. How did that happen? How did you get the first client, and how did you, scale up? How did you acquire more number of clients?
So the earlier clients were obviously, I mean, we went out and kind of met with the few of them, and that's
Mm.
how got our first set of customers. And then, honestly, from since then, it has been our strongest source of leads has been word of mouth, where you work with one company and they like your work, and then you basically kind of get referrals and grow through the references. And still, even today, our biggest source of leads is customer references. And uh, and basically, if you see in your journey to get to product market fit, I think that is probably the biggest indicator that you're doing something right, where you are continuously getting a source of referrals, right? And and apart from that, we obviously do the regular digital marketing, content, this, that, exhibitions, all that we do, but still the biggest source continues to be the the referrals from customers.
Got you. What are the different challenges that you have faced so far while building and growing this venture?
See, I think I mean, if you see in terms of challenges, I mean, we have gone through phases, right? Where we've gone through a phase where the demand was very high, and we were not able to build in time because we didn't have enough engineers on in the team. To basically running out of money, not being able to pay salaries on time, and struggling through that, right? To a stage where we got to a scale where we have decent number of customers, decent revenue flowing, and then how do you keep the platform running 24/7? And after a point, that becomes a bigger problem where you have customers, you have revenue, but your platform is not scaling. So how do you solve for that? So we've gone through all those phases, and right now we are at a scale where we are essentially, uh, I mean, completed the journey from, let's say, 0 to 1 to 1 to 10. Now we are growing from 10 to 100, and that's where a lot of scaling problems are coming in. The scaling is not just in terms of product, but in terms of company culture. How do you get enough number of motivated people to kind of take the lead, take ownership, right? Like I remember a couple of years back, we were still a small team of 15 to 20 people, but it was easy to kind of get something done. And when you cross 100, 150 people, then how do you kind of set up processes? Because then, you have to have processes in place rather than playing on memory and playing founder-driven initiatives, right? So that's when we built out our middle management team, and and we're still, we're still solving for the scale problems, and scale can be solved by having processes in place. So that's the stage that we are in right now. We are defining KPIs for each function, each role, how to conduct interviews. Everything has to be made very systematic, and so that it can be scaled to 10 times from there.
Okay. You spoke about the funding, the funding journey the venture has gone through recently. So tell us about your experience of raising funds, uh, in context of what kind of companies get funded, what investors look for when they fund a venture, and how does the founder to investor relationship look like?
Sure. So see, I think, to be very honest, I think, like if you, the best way to raise funds is to not think about funding. Because then you're focused on building a real business. And when you have a real business investors will come around, right? I see a lot of times entrepreneurs running hand funding to basically try to raise before they even have their first version of the product, and it's very, very difficult, right? It's, especially, since we are in the B2B space, so we are revenue driven. We don't focus on the number of customers as such. We would rather solve problems for a small number of customers who can pay us good amount of money, right? That is the agenda. So very Banya style kind of running a company, but it works very well, especially in the B2B space, because people will only pay you when you solve their real problems. So if you just keep focusing on the quality revenue, I think everything else will fall into place. And that's the same thing happened for us also, uh, where we validated everything by revenue. And that helped us kind of streamline and get the proper attention from the customers as well. And now, especially in the current environment where, essentially, the funding is not that easy to come by anymore as compared to, how things were last year. So I think the focus on profitability, focus on revenue generation, focus on unit economics is even more these days. So next 1.5 years are going to be very tough for entrepreneurs. So the focus has to be on the profitability and the revenue, and then everything will fall into place.
Got you. What are the different lessons that when you're an entrepreneur, you tend to make decisions, and some decisions don't, um, uh, they backfire sometimes, and they tend to become a mistake, counted as a mistake in long run. And when you do mistakes as a founder, you also learn something. So can you tell us what are the some of the major learnings that you have got as an entrepreneur, which other entrepreneurs who are listening to you can also take away and probably can apply to their ventures as well?
So see, mistakes are bound to happen, and see, a lot of times as an entrepreneur, we have to make decisions where we don't have enough data to back it up, right? And that will lead to mistakes. And the best way to essentially manage it is by course correct every time you found, I mean, every time you find yourself making a mistake. So that course correction is actually more important than trying to avoid the mistake, because you cannot avoid mistake. Mistakes will happen because you just don't have enough data or the time to really do all your research and all that, right? So no matter how much research you do, you'll make mistakes. So course correct as early as possible. That is my learning number one. The second thing is, especially in B2B, very sharp focus on your customers. Forget about everything else. I remember in our early days when our competitors raised a lot of money, there was a lot of nervousness inside the team saying, "Yeah, that company raised so much. How are we going to survive now?" But actually, none of that mattered. What mattered was the quality of the solution that we were providing,
mm,
and honestly, that's the only thing mattered.
mm,
Uh, so that's the second learning that we've had from our journey. And the third is actually very interesting, where I mean, obviously, it won't apply to consumer-focused companies, but B2B companies. I mean, one of my mentors, I mean, he told me this, and this still holds very true, is that B2B companies have to operate like tortoise, right?
mm,
Where, I mean, whenever the situation is favorable, you come out of the shell and, I mean, run as fast as possible. But when something is not aligning, things are not aligning, you just go back under your shell and stay there and just wait it out, right? And it works. The B2B companies who are generating revenue, you can just float during the bad times, and then the sun shines again, you come out and basically run,
mm.
right? And we've gone through at least two times of this journey, and and this lesson is fantastic. Where you just don't die. If you don't die, you will grow.
Understood. Uh, in B2B, sometimes to acquire customers, we sometimes use some hacks, which we call as growth hacks, and that mainly works if you're operating in a mid market or SMB level. So, by any chance, have you discovered any hacks through which you were able to acquire a lot of customers without spending a lot?
Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of people feel cold reach out does not work, but cold reach out still works very well. The only thing is that you have to personalize anything which you're doing in terms of the outreach efforts, personalize everything. That's one thing we just randomly tried one of the days, where we started sending out personalized one-on-one emails to people.
Hmm.
And that actually worked out beautifully.
Okay.
So we built out a function out of that, where we have a team that basically sends one-on-one, very highly personalized emails, and the response rate and everything is, I mean, fantastic in that. So rather than sending bulk reach out, now we do very highly hyper personalized outreach, and I mean, it's phenomenal. So that's one of the biggest hacks that we were able to deploy.
Understood. What would you say is the meaning of entrepreneurship for you? How would you define the term entrepreneur?
Um, Entrepreneur to me is basically taking ownership, taking ownership of your customer, taking ownership of your employees, of everything, of every aspect of the business you have to take ownership of,
Mm,
and learning, right? Because obviously each one of us come from a very specific background. Myself, I came from tech background, so I probably didn't know anything about finance or anything about sales. So these kinds of things, I basically had to learn on the fly.
mm,
So ability to learn and openness to learn, I think, I mean, that's very integral part of being an entrepreneur. And just don't be afraid. Doesn't matter. Nothing. I mean, see, we're all. I mean, one thing that I keep telling to my parents also, because obviously they thought it was a weird move to come back to India and do all this. I
mm,
keep telling to them that, what is the worst that can happen, right? I mean, even if I have to go back to job, I mean, now I'm probably 10 times more valuable than I was when I started this,
mm,
right? So that learning which you carry is very, very powerful. So I think you have to keep learning as an entrepreneur. Never be hesitant of learning. Don't be afraid of learning new things,
Mm,
and always just sell. I mean, another aspect, if you think about it, entrepreneurship for founders, after a point, it's just a sales function. You have to sell to everyone. You have to sell
mm,
to your customer. You have to sell to your employees. You have to sell to your employees' parents also at times. But
mm,
they will not. Obviously, they want their kids to go work for established companies and all that. So you have to sell to their parents. You have
mm.
to sell to your. Everyone you come across, you have to keep selling all the time. So you have to learn how to sell.
That is so true. My final question, on entrepreneurs are also human beings, and when you are a human being, you also have some rough days when you are not feeling well, or you are not motivated enough. You just don't feel it like going to office or doing. So when you start entrepreneurship, initial few days, yeah, it's cool, energy, high energy, and very high level of motivation. But uh, it is not the same always. So a time would come when you just lose that focus or lose that energy, or
You-
even this
Sometimes
can
you
happen.
hide
People,
yourself and cry.
yeah, people would not see that energy in you, and they get demotivated. How do you, how do you ensure that every day you come with the new energy and new ways to motivate yourself and drive the whole organization with you?
So, no, what you said is actually very true. Entrepreneurship is a very long and lonely journey where, most of the time you actually have to put up a brave face even if something is going wrong. And things will go wrong, right? So
Mm,
customers will leave you, something bad will happen. So a lot of things will go wrong. So you have to obviously have to have a positive mindset. And another thing is that you have to surround yourself with good mentors, right? Having those mentors, having those people to reach out whenever something is not right and you need a sounding board. I think that is very important. Um, in fact, I think, and the third thing is that you probably have to, especially, you have to form a core team and just be completely open with them and let them know what's going on. If you have a trouble, mm, they should know. And you'll be surprised how often people kind of go over and beyond their personal interest, over and beyond their personal duties, and uh, and support the company. But you have to be willing to be open with them, and obviously when things are moving in a good direction, then you have to reward them.
mm,
So that's when that the culture basically you have to build of rewarding the right people, motivating them, then they will come back and support you.
got you. Uh, on this note, we will close the session. Thanks for your time. Uh, I would say it was a great pleasure to have you on our platform, Puneet, and our best wishes for EasyEcom.
So thank you a lot. Thank you. Thanks a lot.